Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this short session on team values and how you can implement a team values charter in your team. So, Tim Baker's my name, and I'll introduce myself a little bit further as we go. Thank you for joining, and I hope that this is a very practical exercise and something that you can walk away and apply immediately. So let me share my screen and then we'll get underway. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I do a number of things. I am a keynote speaker. I actually write lots of books. Just finished number 12 at the moment, actually. I still play rugby in the Golden Oldies competition in Brisbane, which is a bit tragic, I'd have to say. We play every second week, by the way, because it takes 2 weeks to recover at my age. And you can see that I run workshops in a variety of different formats. So there's lots of things that I do, but I'm going to talk specifically, of course, about the Team Values Charter today. Now, my book, Winning Teams, the 8 Characteristics of High-Performing Teams, received a number of lovely testimonials, which I'm really thrilled about. And you can see a couple of the comments made from Sporting Stars and the Commissioner of Police in Queensland. And they had some great things to say about the book, which is always reassuring. And Nick Farr-Jones, who was the former Wallaby captain and World Cup winning captain, had this to say about my book. So I got some great feedback, which was wonderful. It's always good to get that sort of feedback. Okay, now I want to talk. There are 8 characteristics, of course, of the high-performing team, and in the book, of course, you can read about those, and in each chapter there is a number of practical exercises that you can do to create a high-performing team. And I'm only going to talk about one today, and that is the Team Values Charter. And of the 8 values there that are around the outside of the circle of the diagram there, or the model, you'll notice that the arrow is pointing to building trust. So really, I think if you're looking at one of those 8 characteristics to build trust in your team, and clearly trust is extremely important, then I would suggest the Team Values Charter is ideal for that. Trust is critical for team success. I'm sure you'd agree, because obviously without trust, people are very reluctant to share their point of view. They'll often be very cautious in how they deal with each other. So it's critically important. Unfortunately, trust ebbs and flows. It's not something where you can say that you've achieved it and you've arrived. Trust can go up one minute, go down the next. It can depend on the context and the situation that you're in. And within a team, if you've got a team of, say, 6 people, it's likely that some people in that team will have higher trust levels with other members of the team than others. So it's going to vary in the team as well. All right, so let's talk about perhaps an objection you might have regarding this Team Values Charter, because often people look at a Team Values Charter, or they look at a values generally, and they say, how do we get people to take values seriously? And I think values have been given a bad rap. You know, we see the plaque on the wall and we see the organizational values and we walk past them every day. But really, we have probably had very little say in those values. Those values are really other people's opinions, perhaps senior managers. And we don't necessarily disagree with the values, but we don't necessarily embrace them wholeheartedly either. So it's quite natural for people to ask, well, how do I get people to take this seriously? Well, the secret of taking it seriously is to get the people in your team to actually create the charter themselves. That's how it works, because there's an old adage that people don't argue with their own data. And the reality is, if your team members have come up with a Team Values Charter, then they're not going to argue, because that's their data, basically. It's their feedback. So that's the way to get them to take it seriously. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So before we get underway and talk specifically about the charter, let's just talk about the elements of trust. there are 5 elements of trust that are critically important. And let's just unpack that a little bit, because I think we talk about trust a lot. We know trust because of, our human condition. We know when people trust us. We know when people don't. But what do we actually mean? What are the, if we broke it down, what are the elements of trust that are critically important? I also want to look at, obviously, the charter itself and how you can implement it immediately. This is not a major exercise, by the way. I think you'll find that this will probably take you about 20 to 25 minutes in a team meeting. And those of you who are working in hybrid formats or even remotely, you can still do this online, and it's still very, very effective. So don't feel that you need to be sitting around a table in order to do the team values charter effectively. And at the end of this presentation, I have an offer for you that I'll share with you, a special offer. All right, so let's get underway and look at these elements of trust. These elements of trust, and as I said, there are 5 of them. They come from my book, which I co-authored with Aubrey Warren, called Conversations at Work. We argue that openness is critical to trust. And if you're a very private person as a team leader, perhaps an introvert rather than an extrovert, you might find that it's important to open up a little bit and share a little bit about yourself. Now, there's always a risk in doing that, of course, because the other person could reject your point of view or not agree with you. But it's important to push the envelope a little bit there. Now, you don't want to be a completely open book, of course, but you do need to share something about yourself and not be completely private. So the other side of the coin is acceptance. And what that means, of course, is that when other people are open to you, it's kind of being able to be accepting of their point of view, particularly when it disagrees with your point of view. So acceptance is the other side of the coin. And because, of course, if you're always judging people and their point of view, people will be, of course, reluctant to share that with you, because they'll assume that they'll be criticized for sharing that point of view. Now, congruence is the level of alignment between the words that you use and the actions you take. And what that means is, of course, you need, as a leader, to walk the talk. If people are seeing you acting differently to how you express yourself, then that's what we might call incongruent. And then people, of course, will take notice more of your actions rather than what you say. And now reliability, of course, is about following through on what you've agreed upon. Now, this is important because I think often people, will say one thing to please people, and then they'll go off and do something else. And that can be problematic. And competence is important. So as a team leader, it is important to be competent. It is important to have some skill in not just dealing with people, but also, of course, the product or the service that your team is responsible for. People want to know that they can rely on you, that you know something about the work that we're doing. So there it is. Now, those 5, now any of those that are violated, of course, will reduce the elements of trust. They'll reduce trust between you and the team member. So it's just good to keep in mind that there are those 5 characteristics or elements, and it's important to try to express them as much as you can. And of course, the issue is we always fall over every now and again, don't we? I mean, we're not always going to be able to do all 5 of those things perfectly every single day, in every moment, in every project. So we've got to recognize that we will slip occasionally. But of course, if you're very consistent in being inconsistent with those 5 elements, then that's problematic for you as a leader, and you will find it's very hard to build trust in your team. So let's talk about the team values charter now, which is the main event, of course. And let me just explain that the team values charter is not to replace the organizational values. All right, so your organization undoubtedly has got several values that you abide by. Those different to what I'm talking about here. What I'm really talking about here is is how your team members want to work together. So this charter is about the way people want to work together. And so you're coming to some sort of an agreement or a charter around how people in your team want to work together. So it's very important to get that straight. We're not replacing values. We're not superseding organizational values. Now, it's a powerful exercise because it brings people together towards a common goal. And the common goal is a set of values, which we'll get to in a moment. As I said earlier, it's not time consuming. It'll probably take you around 20 minutes to complete this exercise. And I'm sure you can find 20 minutes online or in a normal team meeting where you can actually engage in this charter. So what is the team values charter? Now, what I suggest you do is I wouldn't preempt this. Some people think, well, the best idea is to get people to complete this exercise before they come to the meeting so that we can hit the ground running. I suggest you don't do that because there's a good chance that one or more people will forget to do it, and then you'll end up having to wait for them in the meeting anyway, which of course is embarrassing to them, and it's going to hold the meeting up. So I would just do this at a meeting. Certainly you can flag the idea that we're going to do a team values charter. There's no problem, but don't give them the questions before the meeting. Do it during the meeting. I really find it works extremely well that way. Now, what I suggest you do is you basically ask people to bring a pen and a pad, or if they prefer, they can tap this out on their iPad or whatever mechanism they've got to record. But the important point here is that you want people to actually record this information. Now, why do you want them to do that? Well, because you want them to share that information with their colleagues at the end of it. So that's why. And the other reason I want people to record it is that they have to put a little bit of thought into it if they have to write it down. So the very first question you start with, and so what you do is you ask people to answer the first question and you simply read it out. Now, the important point from your perspective as a team leader is you need to do this exercise as well. So the idea is, of course, you would do this before. So you'd have your answers down prior to the meeting, because it's a little bit onerous for you to be scribbling down your answers while you're trying to run this meeting. But the very first question you ask is, what is one value that's important to you when working in groups and teams? Now, people have only got one value, and the important thing there is that you ask people to think, now, if there was one thing that was important to me working in this team, or any team for that matter, what would it be? Now, if you were asking me and I was part of your team, I might write down respect. Okay, that's my word. Now, it's a word, it's a label. It doesn't mean anything at this stage. It means something to me because it's my value. But nevertheless, I'd write down the word respect. So you get everybody to write that one value down. Now, just look around the room, and when you see people looking up, of course, you can move on to the second question, but give everyone a chance to record that. All right, now the second question that you ask, and it's an important question, is what's your definition of that value? Now, you want to ask that because, values mean different things to different people. So what I'm trying to do there is to establish what it is that people really do define as that value. So, for example, coming back to my original one, which is respect, I might actually then say in my second answer, respect is when people are prepared to listen to others, even when they may not agree with their point of view. So that's my definition of respect. But I guess other people would have different definitions of respect, and that's fine. But that's certainly my definition, and I'd write that down. So once again, you pause, you give everyone a chance to complete that exercise before you move on to the next heading. Now, number 3, or the third question that you ask, And what you do here is, this is important, and it's very insightful for you, this question, because the question is, why is that value important to you? Now, by asking that question, you can actually get the motivation of why people have written that value down. And that's useful for you as a team leader because you can find out what makes people tick. It's useful for your colleagues in the team so that they can find out why people have identified that value and what it means to them. So, for example, if I sat down and you said, you asked me that question and I had respect as my value, I might actually write something down like, I like to feel that I am respected and my opinions are valued when working with others. All right, so that'd be my definition. So, of course, it might mean something else to somebody else, but that's why it's important to me. And that's the key message here, that you're giving people a skin in the game. You're giving people an opportunity to express themselves and why it's important to them. So that's number 3. And again, I give people a chance to write down the answers, and I just wait for people to look up before I move on to the very last question. And as you can see, as you go through this exercise, it's not onerous. It's not going to take you a long time, but it's deceptively powerful, and you'll find you'll get some really, really great results out of it. Now, the last question you ask, and this is where the rubber meets the road. The last question you ask is, what behaviors would be consistent with that value? So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to look at some tangible actions that would be consistent with that value, because of course, values are, pointless exercises until we've actually done something about it. So the behaviors will be governed by the values. So I get everyone to write down their response to question 4. And, if you ask me, for example, what my answer is to that, I would say something like this. I'd say, not interrupting someone else when they're speaking. Now, it could mean different things to different people, but, in my view, if I'm sharing a point of view in a team meeting, and other people disagree with that, and it's very obvious that they disagree with me, that they at least give me a chance to share my point of view and the reasons why I hold that point of view. Now, to me, that would be a sign of respect for me. I'm not expecting them they're going to agree with my response, but I do expect that they will at least hear me out. So I'd write that down. Okay, so once again, when everybody's completed, what you do is that you then, this is where the magic happens, that you then will ask people to share their response to these 4 questions. Now, I would suggest as team leader, you set the tone and do it yourself to start with. So I might start, if I'm the team leader, and I will read out my responses to those 4 questions. Now, of course, I'm a legitimate member of the team, albeit I'm the team leader. I'm still a member of the team, so I'm given that opportunity to share, and I'll go through and share that. Once I've gone through that, I can invite people to comment, ask questions, whatever they want to do, so that they're absolutely clear about what I'm on about in relation to my value. And then what I'll do is I'll go around the room. So every single person in the team gets a chance to go through this. Everyone, there's no one who's, sitting there and not participating. This is a team effort. So we go through and everybody does their bit, and we come up with the values. Now, I can tell you something very interesting, because I've done this with many organizations, that what'll happen is that you'll hear a pin drop. And the reason you'll hear a pin drop is that people will have a tendency to, they're interested. They're basically very interested in what other people have written down, because people don't normally go around sharing this information, do they? So from that point of view, it's very interesting. So we go around the room and we hear everybody else's presentation. It's a good idea if you can try to get people to make comments and observations as we go around the table, because, we want to make this a bit of a team conversation rather than sort of 6 or 7 static reports. That's easier said than done. I think people are genuinely interested in what other people, how they see themselves in that regard. So if I've got 6 people in a team and, I'll go back one. So if I've got 6 people in a team, then what that basically means is this, that I've potentially, or most at least, have got 6 values. Or it's quite possible that if you've got 6 in your team, it might be that a couple of people have got exactly the same value. Now, you might think that's a problem. It's not. It's actually a good thing, because it basically means that people are pretty much on the same page. Although, having said that, they might have different emphases on those values. So, for example, if 2 people have got the value of respect, I might say to those 2 people at the end of the meeting to get together and to share their definitions and come up with a definition that they're both happy with, so that their values incorporated in the charter, but it's also got a definition that they're both happy with. And that's not as difficult as it sounds. So ultimately, I've come up with a series of values. Now, the only thing that gets recorded in the charter is actually the answer to question 1 and 2. We don't need to worry about 3 and 4. So really, in the charter, and remember, this is your team's charter, I will have a series of values plus a statement of definition for each value. Now, what I would do with that value charter is I wouldn't just throw it in the bin or put it in the drawer. I would actually then publish it. I would perhaps send it out to my team members. I would perhaps use it on my agendas for various meetings, so that people can see that these are the values that govern our own behaviour as a team. I may also, put them on, on the wall. I could even put them on the wall, the plaque on the wall that I talked about before. I could even frame them in the meeting room. So what I want to do now is hold people accountable for those values. So in other words, as a team leader now, I'm in a position to not only talk about what people are doing or not doing in relation to the processes of work, which is what I would normally do as a team leader, and I still should continue to do, but I've now got another framework where I can actually look at people's performance. I can now look at it through the prism of a team values charter. So I can hold people accountable for that. So if somebody, for example, might have shown disrespect to a customer, or perhaps a stakeholder, or whoever, or even one of their own team members, then I'm in a strong position to pull that person up and talk to them about whether or not they thought that behaviour was consistent with our values charter, you see. So in other words, it's a very useful exercise to keep people accountable. And you'll find it's enormously effective, because the quid pro quo is that everyone gets a value in the charter, but the point of the exercise is that you need to honour everybody else's value, and the quid pro quo is that they will honour your value. So in other words, whatever goes in that charter is exactly how people should act when they're interacting with each other in the team. You'll find that it's working extremely well when your team members start holding each other accountable. That's when it's very powerful, and it works extremely well in that sense. So folks, that's the team values charter. I'll just stop sharing for a moment. It's a really great exercise. I know it works well. I've done it in many, many forums, public sector, private sector, not-for-profit. Strongly recommend you give it a go. And if you'd like to know more about that, of course, you can get a copy of my book, Winning Teams, the 8 Characteristics of High-Performing Teams. So I've just got this special offer that I mentioned before. So let's go straight to that and have a look what that's all about. And let's move on to the next slide. Just before I talk about that offer, you may realize at this stage that what I do is that every sort of Friday at 10 o'clock, I have one of my, I have a topic that you can join in for 30 minutes at no cost, obviously, just your time. And I've got one coming up next Friday, so check out that. And when I send you the slides and the recording, which I will be doing shortly, you'll be able to take the link and go straight into that and register. Now, the special offer, my book, Winning Teams, is priced at $35 plus postage on Amazon and other various good bookstores. I am offering you a discount of $25, including postage. If you send me an email by the close of business today, I will make sure that that is done for you. I will sign the book and send it out to you. So that's my offer to you. So there we go. You can order the book that way. All right. So that's pretty much it from me, folks. So I will just sign out at this point. And I hope you found that useful, and I hope you could see some value in the charter for your own team. I know it works well, and it's a simple way of trying to build trust. Some people say to me, well, you know, I'm not sure we're ready for that sort of thing, but I guess the only way to find out is to have a go. And I think, you know, I just know it works extremely well. And I guess the bottom line is if your team is not ready to be sort of putting together a team values charter, then that's problematic anyway in its own right, isn't it? That's obviously telling me that there's some issues in your team. So that's it from me, folks. So I'm done. So all the very best. Have a wonderful weekend. And don't forget that every Friday I have one of these webinars that you're more than welcome to attend, usually about 10 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. And I realize, of course, there are time zone differences. So make sure you check the time before you enter into that. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll catch you next Friday. Thank you and goodbye.